We'll just wait for a couple people to take their seats. And moving on to the conference portion of today. This part of the conference will offer the chance to look at what efforts are being pursued by different outlets of the media during this digital era, as well as respective solutions to that. So we'll have a panel of speakers and a moderator. This is going to be held under the theme, For the Era of Digital Media, What is the Media's Tomorrow? The moderator for this part of the conference is Kim Gyun-mi, Chief of the Culture Desk and Deputy Director of the Seoul Shinmun. Ms. Kim has worked at the Seoul Shinmun since 1989 and has worked at the social, cultural, political, economic, and international desks there. She also worked as a correspondent in Washington for 3 years since 2008. And in 2003, she also worked as a reporter in Kuwait and Iraq after the US invasion in Iraq. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator for this conference section, Ms. Kim Gyun-mi. I would also like to invite the speakers up to the stage, please. We have the moderator, and we also have Judith Sol from the UK, Lee Jun from China, Kang Kyung-min from Korea, Jonathan Walter Manthorpe from Canada. If you could also come up to the stage and take your seats, please. Hi. And we'll give them a big round of applause as well.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Gyun-mi, and I'm with the Seoul Shinmun, and I'm now in Deputy Managing Director of the newspaper. And as I have been introduced, I've been working in Washington since 2008 to 2011, and now I'm in charge of the cultural news as well. And first of all, I would like to welcome all of you to visit Korea in a very interesting and a very critical time, when we can see the tensions. I was worried that some of you might miss this very important conference because of this crisis, which is sometimes more portrayed as a very big tension from the foreign media. But I hope that you will see a different picture, and hope you have the deeper understanding of what's happening here in Korean Peninsula. And also, yesterday we have seen the introduction of the Psy, the new album, and which was also a big hit. So this is a very interesting time, as well as I think this is a very interesting time to discuss about the future and also the present of the digital media and the challenges we are facing. So today I'm very grateful to introduce 4 of our speakers who will be talking about the present and the future of the digital media and where we are heading. First, today we have 4 speakers from UK and also China and Korea and Canada. And each speakers will have 10 to 15 minutes to present their presentations, what's happening in their newsrooms. And after that, since we don't have panelists, they will be either asking questions to each other or give comments on their individual presentations. And after that, we will have the floor open, so you can have questions directed to either 4 of the speakers. And as you know, as I've heard, that you are going to have a very long and busy schedule. I have to close this by 3:40, so I hope that you will have a lot of questions. First, I would like to introduce Ms. Judith Sol from Guardian from UK. So she will be telling us about what's happening in her newsroom. Okay, let's give a big hand to Miss Judy Soul.
Thanks very much. I hope my slides are working. Yep. So that's a picture of the Guardian website as it stands now. I've been at the Guardian for about 10 years now, and in that time there have been massive changes to the way we work. So I'm going to talk a bit about the history and these changes, and also what's unique about the Guardian. Thank you. Thanks. Magic. So this is the first edition of the paper, which was then called the Manchester Guardian. It was published in May 1821, initially as a weekly and then a daily paper. We're unique among the British press in that we don't have an owner. We don't have a Rupert Murdoch type person who gives us money and has expectations about how we should work. Rather, we rely on the Scott Trust, which is a fund that was established by the former owner of the Guardian, C.P. Scott, former editor, to allow it to exist in perpetuity. So that's C.P. Scott. And obviously it's a real advantage to have a benefactor like this. It allows us to be completely editorially independent. We aren't expected to please the political ambitions or whims of any owner or to make a profit on their investment. But it can be a problem in troubled financial times because there's no one to give us any more money. I'm a foreign news journalist, not a business person, so I won't be talking to you about figures and finances. But it's no secret that The Guardian, like all large media groups, has been struggling with a drop in paper circulation and a decrease in advertising. Because of this, we've put a lot of effort into our digital strategy. We first started launching stories on the internet in 1994, but it was in January 1999 that The Guardian Unlimited, as it was then known, was launched. At first, it had a completely separate staff on a separate floor of the building, working independently of us in the paper. They were mostly younger and less experienced, and we had really nothing to do with each other. By September 1999, the site had 1 million users a day, and we published our first blog, known rather formally as a weblog, in 2000. According to the Guardian legend, we were also the first to introduce live blogging, starting minute-by-minute reports of sports matches. And these days, even the New York Times has been known to live blog, although I don't think they'd use that as a verb. And this is what a Guardian live blog looks like these days. And we've got amazing ability to embed video and audio and photos and tweets to keep them exciting. So since the early days, we've grown considerably. And all the time, we've been trying to find different ways to make digital journalism pay. In 2003, we introduced some charges for readers who wanted for an advert-free version of the website, some pay-for crosswords and daily email digests. Most of those initiatives failed and don't exist today, and the ones that do are for free. Then in 2004, we launched a dating site called Guardian Soulmates, which is probably one of our most profitable parts of the paper. In 2006, we started Comment is Free, which is free. We call it SIF, and it's very well loved and much commented on, but I don't know if any of you have trawled through the comments. It can be quite a difficult read. So it can be a hated section of the website as well. And then one of the biggest revolutions started in 2008 when all business and foreign news became web first. That is, we published it on the web as soon as it was ready, before it went into the paper. And national news went web first a few years later. In 2009, there was a Guardian app for iPhone and iPod. It was launched and it was downloaded nearly 70,000 times in its first month. Around this time, our digital output started expanding exponentially, with new sites and innovations and applications being launched almost monthly. I work at The Guardian, and there's no way that I know my way around the whole website, so I'd encourage you to explore it. But as you can imagine, this has had significant impact on the way that we actually do our jobs. In the beginning, the web was a little side project, running parallel to the paper and largely ignored by those of us who considered ourselves the real journalists, as opposed to the youngsters playing online. Then in 2009, we officially integrated, doing web and paper journalism together, with only a few people being designated as platform specific so that they worked on either the paper or the web. We all had to learn new skills, and it hasn't been easy. At first, the needs of the paper dominated, with the web being seen as the poor relation, but that dynamic is changing all the time. It can lead to some tension, with the same reporters being asked to file an immediate take for the web, and then do some quick audio or video, and then all the research required for a longer written through piece later on. And there can be conflict between editors who are wanting their needs prioritized, but we are getting better at finding a balance. So as I said, the best way to find out about the website is to explore it. I won't go into any more detail. But the most important thing is to say that apart from a few really specialized services, The Guardian's content remains free to all users all the time. Many other media organizations have introduced a total paywall, such as The Times, or limit the number of articles users. But by remaining free and constantly innovating, The Guardian has increased our global readership to an average of more than 4.5 million page hits a day, with more than 1 million on mobile a day as well. We've chosen to be as open as possible, even as our competitors have become more closed. This is a controversial strategy because the business model remains unproven. It's not yet clear when the online income will make up for the losses in print. But it's a strategy that we believe will prove itself in the long run. And there's also a kind of common misconception among journalism that what is done online is kind of quick and dirty and isn't the real journalism. But I think that's been largely disproved by some really good investigative pieces that have been done. We did this on the siege of Aleppo. It's an interactive that goes into kind of every detail of what happened and what's known and what's not known. That's well worth looking at. And there's also some other good in-depth long-form journalism online. But before I finish, I'd like to talk about one innovation that's particularly close to my heart in foreign news. And it's about our role as more of an aggregator than reporting. So as more and more content is published online, it becomes increasingly difficult to decide what's worth reading. I think there's a role for a trusted news source to act as a curator of work being published elsewhere. We have several of these sorts of initiatives at The Guardian, and one of them, the Africa Network, is one that I edit. This is just one day on the Africa Network, which is the result of a partnership that The Guardian has developed with about 25 other sites writing from or about Africa. Some of them are single bloggers, some of them are collectives, some of them are think tanks or other media groups. There's no money involved in the partnership at all, but we agree to share content with each other in a mutually beneficial way. We monitor their RSS feeds, they monitor ours. If something catches our eye, we can choose to repost it on The Guardian, and they're free to do the same with some of our content. It's an unusual way of doing things, and as an editor, it's sometimes difficult not to be able to send stories back, to be rewritten, or to be able to commission things that I'm interested in. But it's a wonderful way to expand coverage of an underreported region without spending a lot of money. It's also a good way to encourage debate and to introduce different perspectives rather than sticking to just one Guardian voice. So it's the early days for the Africa Network, and there's been some good work on it. The figures show that our traffic in Africa is increasing, which was the idea. But the most important thing in the end, although the digital world presents many challenges to journalists, it also presents massive opportunities. We have a whole new world of audiences to reach out to. We're not restricted to our own geographical region, and I'd say that's something to be welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. The case of The Guardian is something, as she has mentioned in your presentation, somewhat controversial. Most of the newslets are trying to find the business models to survive in this digital journalism. And I think your case is going to be a very good example for us to look into, but there are other options that are trying to make other business models to follow, which will be paying, charging your your readers, looking for new readers. And now we would like to give, hear the stories from what's happening in China. I would like to introduce Mr. Li Jun from Xinhua News Agency. He's the senior editor, and he's also a specialist in this new news media. Correct? Okay. I would like to introduce Mr. Li Jun. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Li Jun from China's Xinhua News Agency. The topic of my speech today is China in 2012, New Media, New Trends. First of all, let's take a snapshot how new media has changed the communication landscape of China these days. Back in 2008, when the massive Wenchuan earthquake hit China, traditional media used SMS, short message service, only to provide info from the world-lock disastrous areas. But last year, another earthquake hit Yunnan province. People from the stricken areas sent out microblogs asking for help to look for their family members, and they help each other through microblog, not from us. Every single person actually turned out to become a media hub itself, receiving information from outside media like us, while at the same time sending out information to public by themselves. As we can see, there have been tremendous developments in new media over the past few years. Looking beyond, our question is, how will the new media be in future? Xinhua News Agency's New Media Center will publish its first such report on new media next week, and I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you the key points in the report. What's the landscape of new media today in China? I am sure that while you know Google, Facebook, and Amazon, you also can easily name those media giants from China, like Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu. And they are initiating brand new technologies and applications that in turn serve to enrich the media landscape around the world. Let me show you two set of figures. From them, you can see that China has witnessed the fastest developing front of new media in the past few years. Since connected to international internet back in 1994, China has witnessed rapid development of media. According to the Chinese National Network Information Center, by the end of 2012, netizens reached 564 million in number, and mobile phone netizens 420 million, which was 18% above that in 2011. As we have seen, new media has emerged and benefited, and will continue being so, from technology including information technology, digital technology, and network technology. There are 4 areas of technology innovations. The first, China leading the 4G front. As you know, China's self-patented TD-LTE was named one of the 2 international standards of 4G last January. The second, wide broadband infrastructure. The third, dawn of cloud computing. The fourth, arrival of big data era. What were the trends of new media in 2012? The first, social media generating more impact. In microblog, there were over 300 million users by end of last year, and over half of netizens use microblog in China. It is worth particular attention that over 80% of the users visit microblog through mobile terminals. What has aroused huge applause in China today is something called Weixin, just like Kakao in Korea, developed by Tencent back in 2 years ago. Users can quickly send voice messages, videos, pictures, and words, and chat within groups. In January, in less than 2 years, Weixin has over 300 million registered users. The second, video, become the new access to information. Last year, Youku and Tudou merged to become the largest network video company in China. For the first time, online video covered a greater number of netizens than searching. We think that this year will become a milestone for mobile video as more and more users are used to access video through mobile terminals to kill time. Streaming volume through mobile terminals in Youku Tudou, for example, accounted for 1/5 of their total volume. The third, mobile media, changing reading habit. Manufacturers of Chinese Kindles suffered decelerated growth and losses in last year. However, stimulated by the tablet computers, the digital publishing and reading market grow fast. China's Administration Bureau of Publications formed strategic partnerships with all mobile operators to encourage digital publishing. Meanwhile, all major online merchants swarmed into digital reading space. The fourth, arrival of mobile payment era. I think it's good news for medias to online shoppers. Then, what's the path alternatives of mainstream media? In the past decade, we see lots of crownless kings in the good old time fading amid the rise of internet. As a matter of fact, during a time when traditional mass communication is undergoing fundamental changes, mainstream media should actually be more ambitious. First of all, ambition and action during emerging of new media. Last year, China still has nearly 400 million of internet news readers. It is out of the question that in the new media world there is still huge demand of news. It's the paper instead of news that is fading. Once mainstream media can successfully adapt itself to the new communication way, it will be robust and generating more impact. We have good reason to believe that mainstream media in China has enjoyed huge advantage in mass communication when it will continue being so. The second, new and old mainstream media turning to mobile communication. In the era of mobile new media, it is undoubtedly the trend for mainstream media, whether new or old, to turning to mobile communication. While nearly 80% of the papers in North America have started their apps in mobile platforms, it is no less so in China, where we see mobile apps tailor-made for tablet, computers, and two digital code in complementary use. Wei Xinhua News Agency recently launched a new media product, which published words, pictures, videos through an integrated platform extended to MMS, SMS, WAP, and various terminals. More and more media have started to publish through mobile terminals, however, only a few started to sell. For traditional media, it still needs to be tested by time whether mobile terminals can make a living as an independent form. The last, attention to micro communication. In China today, there are two main opinion arenas. One is the mainstream field, led by state-owned news agency and TVs, and the other is the internet. In 2012, the state teams played exceptionally well in their microblog arena, able to deliver real-time news in the first place and strong commentaries that won wide support in the opinion circle. The rise of mainstream media in microblog area has changed along the status quo that mainstream media were somehow delayed or ignored. The courage and ability of the mainstream media to disclose truth and safeguard social justice has regained them trust of public, and in turn strengthened their efficiency and effectiveness in mass communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Li Jun. And I remember as you have mentioned in your presentation, when I was in the international news desk, I remember covering the crisis, the earthquake, and also the other crisis in China, not by the reports from your mainstream or state media, but carried some of the comments on the reports from Weibo and other SNS. So it was an eye-opening experience for many of our colleagues here to gather the real what's happening in the field. So, and I think we are very much interested in what's happening in China, because China is one of the biggest market and what's happening and a lot of us are interested in. So it was very interesting to hear what's happening in your newsroom. And next will be Mr. Kang Kyung-min from 조선일보, and he will be giving us a brief information, a quick introduction to what's happening here in Korea. As you might know, that Korea is very much keen to what's happening in the IT technology, and we are also undergoing various changes, and also we are facing many challenges as well as opportunities in this digital media. And Mr. Kang will be presenting what's happening in his newsroom, as well as the Korean journalism as well. And now, Mr. Kang.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Kang Kyung-min from the 조선일보 Daily. I prepared a slide to show you the Korean mobile market in a single slide. The only thing that you are familiar with would be iPhone, Galaxy, and Facebook. That's right. First of all, Samsung has sold about 25 million smartphones with various Galaxy series, such as Galaxy S3 and Galaxy Note. On the other hand, iPhone, which is hugely popular throughout the world, has sold only 5.5 million devices, much less than Galaxy series. Like Galaxy series, most of popular mobile and online service in Korea is locally made, especially KakaoTalk, a messaging app similar to WhatsApp, is used by 30 million out of 50 million Korean population. Last year, KakaoTalk made a huge profit as it evolved into a gaming platform, and a lot of games using its social dimension had become a national sensation. While Facebook is quite popular in Korea, but Kakao Story, a photo-sharing social network service of KakaoTalk, is becoming more popular. Naver is maintaining popularity on the mobile as well on the web. Last year, mobile page views of Naver surpassed PC page views. There are other mobile services such as photo, transportation information, mobile banking, social commerce, music, and education. And most dominant services are made by local companies. In Korea, Android is a dominant mobile OS with about 90% market share. It is most likely because Korea is the home of major Android smartphone manufacturers such as Samsung and LG. Maybe except for online commerce, portal services and media companies have intensely fought over the dominance of online landscape. 중앙일보 offered the first online news service in Asia in 1995, and Yahoo Korea first made a news category in the late 90s. In 2000, OMyNews, the open source news service where reporting is done by readers, started its service. Since 2000, Korean portals, whose most popular service until then was the email service, became very popular by offering other services such as community service along with news. From then on, people started to prefer portals from news media's website for consuming news. Portals encourage the news consumption from their website by directly or indirectly editing news content that they bought from various news media companies. In 2002, Naver introduced a knowledge service called 지식인, where it offered aggregated the question and answer of users into a service. The knowledge service and search became very popular. Since then, Naver became the most popular internet service, even among all portal and all internet service. Actually, Hangul had started a similar service called DBDig earlier than Naver in 2000, but it failed after it introduced a paywall. As Naver and other portals became more and more dominant, media companies tried several strategies such as providing multimedia contents and blog service in 2000s. It was a good experience for them, but didn't lead to much user engagement. Later, Naver introduced a news service called Newscast, in which they offered to news media companies to edit their contents on Naver front page themselves. If a visitor clicks on the title of the news article that they title and place on Naver, he or she will be directed to the article page on the news media's website. News media companies start to put a provocative title to their article to attract more attention. It created many side effects. The Korean internet is still dominated by Naver, and in 2012, Paran, the success of the first Korean online service Hitel, and Yahoo Korea, the first portal in Korea, closed their service in 2012. Naver had been criticized, and in April 2013, it introduced a news service called Newsstand in Response. On the slide is the front of Naver from 1998 to today. There have been a lot of change in design. You would want to focus on how news section has changed. At first, news section didn't exist, and then there is a small section on the corner, and then it moved to the center, and the size has got bigger. This is the last slide. The newsstand look like. If you click on the logo of the news companies that you selected already, the company news page that it edited according to Naver's guideline show up. If you click on the title of the article, you can read the article on the news media's company website. Previously, you just click on the title on its main page, and now you have one more layer before you read the article, which is least convenient for users. For such a reason, news media companies had experienced from 30 to 70% decline in page view. As Koreans are used to getting news from portals, such a decline in page view was predictable. This chart shows how Koreans consume news. The ratio of people consuming news on portal front page is almost 90%. And if you include other sources within portal, other than their main page, the ratio is close to 100%. The percentage of people who directly visit news company website are less than 15%. The survey allowed a multiple response. News media industry insiders were hopeful when the mobile trend began. But the situation now is that portals are maintaining their popularity, while media companies are experiencing their power decline. At the time when online and mobile market situation is not hopeful, Print subscribers are declining very fast. The ratio of national newspaper subscription has declined from 50% 10 years ago to 1/4 now. But there is a reason to be hopeful. People talk about the death of newspaper publicly, but news is the most popular consumed content. People use about 50 minutes to consume news daily. It is higher than any other categories. For example, 조선일보 has experienced a decline in newspaper print copy. But internet and mobile readership has increased. However, the problem is that the increase online and mobile readership does not directly lead to an increase in revenue. Especially revenue from online service has hit the wall. That's why many news media companies in Korea are trying to find a way to make a profit from mobile service. For example, 한겨레, 매일비즈니스, and 중앙일보 are selling their news on their own mobile newsstand platforms. Also, 조선일보, my company, has built a platform called Textstore, which sells newspaper, magazines, and ebooks, not only ours, but also those of other new media companies and publishers. However, it's difficult to make much out of it. The reason is that people are still resistant to the idea that paying for news contents. In a survey, 70% of people said no, while only 10% said yes when asked about their willingness to pay for news. The darkest blue one is absolutely no. That means the absolutely no. Over 40%. The result is similar when we ask them whether they ever paid for content from news media companies. Only 10% of people had an experience of paying for any content, including PDF and biographical information and market finance information. Even among those willing to pay for news, the amount of money they were willing to pay were very small. The majority of them said they were willing to pay for about $1 a month. $1. Another problem is that people are not aware of the copyrights of news contents. The awareness of the copyrights of movies, music, and comics are relatively high, but the awareness of the copyrights of news content is among the lowest in all contents, even lower than for advertisement. It shows how important it is to increase the awareness of the copyright of news content. Especially important to note is for the movies, where the awareness of its copyright are among the highest industry insiders engage in a variety of activities and campaigns to increase the awareness, and illegal downloads decreasing as people are getting used to pay for the content. The same is true for music and broadcasting contents as well, something news industry has to take note of. If we want to increase the protection of the copyright and to get people used to the idea of paying for news content, it's important to create news content that are worth spending money on. In a related study, people are more willing to pay for content other than widely consumed entertainment and political news content. For example, people willing to pay for content related to health, medical information, travel, finance, and education. There are 3 parts to prepare for new media era. First, digital first mind, content upgrading, recognition, conservation. First of all, digital first mind. I think recruiting personnel with both understanding of news media and technology provide appropriate training programs. Also, we have to retrain journalists about the nature and production mechanism of online news. News consumers are more willing to buy news content on health, economy, education, I told already, and investigative journalism. In producing news content, prioritize area where consumers are willing to pay. In producing web and mobile news content, it's crucial to offer news content in multiple formats in a fast and seamless manner. Above all, consumer perception that news is free has to be changed. News contents are valuable products worth spending money on educating the public about the copyright of news. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gong, for such a very, what can I say, very informative presentation, which also gave me insight to what's happening in our news media. I think before going on to our last speaker, I think the issue of whether the news and the information which is gathered and which is reported by the journalists are for free or for which should be charged for. And this is, and how we are going to deal with it. How are we going to prepare our journalists for such a changing media landscape? And whether and this is going to be our issues that all the news media, the journalists have to tackle in the time being. And our last speaker will be from Canada, and he has been in the news media for nearly 50 years, since he has began his career in 1965. And I would like to introduce Mr. Jonathan Walter Manthrow from Canada. He's with the Vancouver Sun, an international affairs columnist. And we would like to hear what you think about what's happened since past 4 decades and what's to come and what we to expect. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you to the Korean Journalists Association for arranging this. And as I learned today, I started as a newspaper reporter just 1 year after the founding of the association. But it was also 1 year after the controversial Canadian scholar and philosopher of communications theory, Marshall McLuhan, published his views on the relationship between information and information technology. This was neatly summed up in the phrase, "The medium is the message." McLuhan argued that the medium by which information is conveyed becomes part of the information it is carrying. Thus, the medium of communication becomes an influence, in some cases the dominant influence, on the message itself. There is no doubt that McLuhan was very far-sighted. He was putting forward his theories at a time when none of the modern media we now take for granted existed. Indeed, he often used the then most modern form of information technology, films and movies, to illustrate his arguments. But only a few years after he first proposed the idea that information technology often comes to dominate the message it carries, there were revolutions that appeared to back his thesis. However, with the benefit of nearly 50 years of hindsight, I think we have become overly preoccupied with the technologies that deliver information. We have lost sight of a very simple truth. The message is the message, always has been and always will be. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, I was working at the Toronto Globe and Mail, Canada's only national newspaper at that time. It was a newspaper produced by the classic hot metal process using a linotype machine to cast lines of type known as slugs, which were then assembled in a page frame for printing. It was a process that had operated for over 100 years and worked very well. Even now, it amazes me how fast we could get a story from the reporter's typewriter into the hands of readers on the streets. And some of you veterans may remember we had on the front page what was called the stop press box. If an important story broke while a press run was in progress, we could, quite literally, stop the press and insert a 30-word brief story in that little box. I'm always reminded of that when I read or hear about tweets and Twitter. There is nothing new under the sun. In the Globe and Mail, we prided ourselves on being Canada's premier newspaper. Our stories set the national agenda every day. We had no real competition from other media. Most radio stations did not take news very seriously, and television news was still in its infancy. A television news program usually consisted of a presenter reading stories from the wire services, or, quite often, the stories in our newspaper. Pictures of news events were rare and usually a day behind because they were produced on 16mm film, which had to be chemically processed and edited before being broadcast. All that changed in the mid-1970s when television stations got video recorder cameras that allowed them to broadcast pictures of events that had happened only a few hours or even a few minutes before. Television news began to dominate the national agenda and also offered some proof of McLuhan's theories. Dominant news stories now became not necessarily what many people would consider most important, but what they were stories for which television had the most dramatic or compelling video. As a foreign correspondent all around the world, I've seen this time and time again, that you get back to the hotel room and you turn on CNN and they're running something on the place you were at a few minutes ago, and the number of times I've said to myself, it was not like that. Is quite astonishing, but there we are. But compelling video came to make the stories. And to a large extent, the competition for news audiences remains a tussle between pictures and words, and I would suggest that that's an essential element of what we're dealing with in the digital age, is that continuing conflict between pictures and words. The new intimacy of television news was very attractive. More and more people began relying on television for their daily information diet. Newspaper circulation figures suffered, and that was when various pundits and analysts started predicting the death of newspapers, as they continue to do today. The digital revolution and advent of the internet, starting about 20 years ago, has undoubtedly mounted an even greater challenge to the survival of newspapers than television did. And like newspaper publishers and editors worldwide, as the revolution started, Canadian newspaper managers failed to fully grasp the challenge mounted by the internet or its long-term implications. In Canada, we have not seen the dramatic losses of circulation and the closure of newspapers that has happened, for example, in the United States. Some recent figures from the Canadian Newspaper Association, for example, show the daily average circulation for paid newspapers in 2011 to be over 3,840,000, compared with 4,675,000 in 2007. Indeed, the latest figures from the Newspaper Audience Data Bank show the weekly audience in 2012 was 13,458,000, compared with 12,382,000 in 2008. I will come back to this in a moment because the increase contains a very important and optimistic message. What we have seen in Canada, though, like in many other countries, is a very serious falling off in advertising revenue that continues to threaten the survival of some of our newspapers, including the group of metropolitan daily newspapers for which I work. Newspaper print advertising spending in 2005 in Canada topped $3 billion, but in 2012, admittedly with the intervention of the global economic recession, it had dropped by a third to $1.9 billion. And although we, like most newspapers, have established a major online presence, we have been unable to demand or get the same revenues from advertising on our webpage as we do in print. Paul Godfrey, the CEO of my own Postmedia newspaper group, has been quoted as saying, $1 lost in print, 10 cents gained in digital. In the United States, it is reckoned newspapers get $1 in online advertising revenue for every $25 they get in the printed newspapers. Another problem we are still facing is that from the start, news on the internet appeared to be free, as we've just heard. Many sites opened up offering free access to news, and the audience soon began to question why it should continue to pay newspaper subscriptions. In response, very many newspapers made what can be argued was a serious mistake and opened websites offering the entire content of their newspapers for free. The thoughts behind this move were that it was essential to keep reader loyalty, and that in time, online advertising revenue would restore the newspaper's income. But by 2005, it had become evident in Canada, as well as in other countries, that advertising revenue was not going to return to what it had been. Readers were going to have to be encouraged to take out either subscriptions for online newspapers or make micro payments to read individual stories. In the meantime, the culture of the relationship between people, their use of the internet, and their appreciation of online news had changed, certainly in Canada, maybe not elsewhere. People, especially the young, are no longer as hesitant about buying products on the internet as they were even 10 years ago. And perhaps more important from the point of view of newspapers, very many people have come to realize that the whole notion of the ultimate information democracy of an open internet and such fads as citizen journalists was nonsense. Many people now realize that reliable news is indeed a product with value produced by professional journalists. But it has still not been easy to persuade readers that even if they only read newspapers on their computer, tablet, or smartphone, they're going to have to pay for it. My old employers, the Globe and Mail, introduced a paywall in 2007, but after a few months of seeing online subscriptions either not growing or not growing fast enough, it dropped the barrier in June of 2008. Since then, however, public acceptance of online newspaper subscriptions has grown. My own group experimented with several paywall models before deciding on a plan which gives open access to 10 stories every 30 days, and after that requires a subscription. Industry analysts reckon by the end of this year, similar paywalls will be standard in Canada in pretty well all newspapers. And since then, of course, we have also gone web first. And what Judith said about the Guardian, you could say pretty much for the changes of culture in every newspaper across Canada. Indeed, what we are finding in the Postmedia Group, and it's the same among other newspapers, is that while subscriptions for print editions remain about double those for online subscriptions, the market for exclusively digital access is growing rapidly. That is especially true among young adults. In our major cities and among people in the 18 to 34 age range, the daily exclusive online readership goes from 20% in Calgary to 36% in Toronto. In my city, Vancouver, it is 24%. Nationwide, computers remain the main portal for reading online news, but we are finding that among the all-important 18 to 34 age group, access to news only via mobiles, either phones or tablets, is growing rapidly, with from 3% growth in 2010 to 21% growth in 2012. So the future is bright so long as we keep our heads and remember a couple of important things. One is that internet news is a print medium. To me, and I suspect many others, it doesn't matter whether what I write appears on dead trees or a computer screen. The relationship with the reader is the same. The other is to remember what we are selling. And this is very important because so many news operations have cut staff dramatically in order to counter falling revenues. Our product is a daily view of the world filtered through our professional judgment and experience. If we lose sight of that in the rush for balanced budgets, we lose everything. Thank you.
Well, thank you all four speakers. Before we go I would like to open this floor to the four speakers to throw some questions to each other, whatever some of you might be interested, or you might have questions about what's happening or the situations that is different. And from my point of view, before I give you some time to think what you will be asking each other, I have one question to most of all of you, if I may, to just go on with this discussion. I think you have mentioned, I think there are more and more people coming in, and as you have said, as Judith and also, Jonathan has mentioned about the digital first, web first. In order to think the web first, we have to have the journalists or our news reporters get ready for that changed circumstances in the newsroom. What are some of the, what do you think, how do you prepare your reporters or your desk or the editors to be more oriented and get used to be prepared to this changed circumstances in your newsrooms? Are they willing to follow the footsteps or the changed situations? Are they well prepared? How do you train your reporters to be digital keen? First.
Do you mean just publishing web first or the whole of the...
Publishing web first.
Well, I think in a way it's more natural to publish web first, because in the way that we work, if we've only got papers, everything is geared towards those paper deadlines, and and there's so much that you do that is specific to a newspaper, which is partly what's lovely about a newspaper, but it's also kind of it's restricting in a way. And the great thing with getting people to file, and it's going to be web first, is that you get early copy, which is I think that's what every news desk wants all the time, is early copy. And people who have exclusives or great lines on something get to see their stuff immediately. They don't lose it. So I think some reporters love it, especially people who are keen. They really like being able to get something up straight away before something else happens. It's just journalism. I mean, I completely agree that it's not like doing anything completely different. We might have new skills in video and whatever, but basically what we're doing is journalism. So I think desks have to realise you have to not be so protective over your story, because you think, oh, if I put it up now, then all the competitors will know what we're going to splash on tomorrow. But once you get over that hurdle, very soon you realise it's very rare that you lose a story that way. And also, because the paper's not the kind of touchstone anymore, so it doesn't matter if you lose it that way.
I remember about 5 years ago, our editor-in-chief, we just had a redecoration and a revamping of the newsroom, and editor-in-chief came in, stood in the middle of the newsroom and said, "We are no longer a newspaper, we are a news organization." And you just had to look at that newsroom to see exactly what she meant. It could have been a TV studio, it could have been a radio studio, it could have been a newspaper. Now, I have to say that at the same time as we made this cultural shift, there was also a buyout, so that there were any of the old hands who really couldn't face yet another technological change in newspaper were able to take a fairly healthy package of money and retire early. But the people who stayed, the people that remained, have been incredibly enthusiastic about adopting the possibilities of the new technologies. And I think we must always keep that in mind, that these provide us with a whole new palette of ways of presenting information, news, analysis to our audiences. And I personally have found it an enormously exciting age in which to be a journalist, maybe one of the most exciting that I've ever lived through. But it changes very swiftly. A few years ago, probably about 4 years ago, I started doing a daily podcast, a daily audio. And it was extremely popular for a while. And then, for some reason, the office decided that, in fact, what people wanted now was video. There was a fairly brief popularity for video. And so I was shifted over to doing videos as well as print. But now it's changed again. And I think this also goes with the increasing popularity of mobile devices, that people who are getting their news through mobile devices are often more keen on getting it as a podcast, as an audio, than they are as a video. So last week I started doing daily podcast again, and that will carry on, I'm sure, until there's a new little piece of technology and fashion changes again.
I'm speaking Korean for speaking easily. 사실 저희 신문사, 저희 조선일보 같은 경우는 기본적으로 이제 닷컴 서비스를 하고 있는데, 그 닷컴에서 들어오는 수익이 그 종이를 통해서 들어오는 수익에 훨씬 못 미치고 있어요. 이제 그런 상황 때문에 아직까지는 종이가 먼저 다라는 게 그 현실이고, 지금 계속 이제 그걸 바꾸기 위해서, 근데 바꾼다는 게 지금 계속 회사가 이제 기자들이 젊어지면서 그런 뭐 뉴미디어나 디지털에 대해서는 익숙해지고 있긴 하지만, 어떻게 보면은 그런 수익 측면에서 확실한 그 대안이 나오기 전까지는 그게 어려운 게 현실입니다. 지금 뭐 당장 저희 기자들, 젊은 기자들 같은 경우는 블로그도 직접 운영하고 사진도 찍고 동영상도 찍고 여러 작업을 하고 직접 뭐 웹페이지 올린 작업을 하고 있는데, 그렇다고 이제 그게 기본적으로 그 온라인이 먼저가 아니라, 디지털 먼저가 아니라 언제나 기본적으로는 종이가 먼저라는 그런 현실입니다.
I worked for xinhuanet.com for 10 years from 2001. Xinhua News Agency published news first in xinhuanet.com. Just now I said it's the paper instead of news that is fading. It's pity, but maybe it's a trend. But I think we began to test 12 years ago, to establish xinhuanet.com, and it will IPO maybe this year. I think maybe this is a way for big news organizations, just like Xinhua News Agency, to develop digital news, maybe. Thank you.
Any questions to other speakers?
Yeah, can I ask a question to my colleague from Korea? You had some quite really interesting information about what readers want to read, and saying that we should focus more on what they want to read. It seemed to me they wanted to read more about education and health, and there was something else. And does that skew what we do in a way? Because what we do is generally news and kind of politics. And how much do you think we should be swayed by what it is that people want to read when we make our decisions about what we want to cover?
기본적으로 이제 지면에서 수용하는 것도, 지면에서 원하는 기사가 있고, 보면은 온라인 상에서 먹히는 기사가 있는 것이 확실합니다. 그래서 이제 그 균형을 깨지 않는 상태에서 이제 지금 현재는 닷컴에도 그 종이 신문의 기사만을 거의 일방적으로 받아서 올리고 있는데, 그것이 아니라 지면에 맞는 그 말씀하신 정치, 사회 그런 분야는 지면에서 더 주로 다루고, 반면에 그런 뭐 엔터테인먼트, 그 먹히는 컨텐츠는 엔터테인먼트랑 또 팔리는 컨텐츠인 뭐 파이낸스나 뭐 의학 정보 같은 경우는 닷컴상에서 좀 더 유기적으로 운영하는 게 바람직하지 않나 싶습니다.
I wonder if I could ask Mr. Lee, how is China coping, and can it cope with the freedom of the new media? We've all heard about the Great Firewall of China. It seems to be quite pervious in some areas, but it seems to be also very effective in others. My own newspaper, we started a Chinese web edition about 18 months ago because we have a very large Chinese speaking and reading population. It was hugely successful to begin with, and spread not only through our ethnic Chinese population in Canada, but also through much of Southeast Asia, and indeed in China itself, until it fell foul of the Great Firewall, and it's now blocked in China. But do you see, I must admit, I see some signs that censorship in China is loosening quite a lot. I see a lot of quite independent journalism now coming out of China.
I answered the same question 10 years ago.
Did you
An
have the same
American
answer?
officer asked me the same question. There were about 3 million blogs 10 years ago. When the American officer got the information, he said, "Oh, really? It's amazing." But today there are 300 million microblogs in China. almost half of the adults can provide microblogs and blogs and Weixin, just like Kakao in China. I think they have you know, I can't, I can't, maybe this is the answer. 300 million microblogs in China. It's enough. Thank you.
Any questions? Well, any comments on each other's presentations? If not, then I think since I know that we don't have that much time, but I would like to have this floor more open. So, because all four the speakers here are they are the reporters, journalists. They are not in the business. I mean, in the media business. They are not specialists in the media industry. So I think it will be a very valuable time for us to ask questions. What's happening in the other parts of the world? Because I know that there are around a lot of represented reporters from over 70 countries gathered in this room, and what's happening in your country and what you're interested in could be varied from country to country. So I would like to rather have more free discussion about and Q&A session with open to the floor, so you can ask either any of the speakers what you would think and what your questions are. At first, if you raise your hand and state where you're from and your name and your affiliation and who your questions will be directed, then I will just point out and we will have. First, I will be giving, okay, Mr. Mansour Arzami. Okay. Would you like to come up and have? Oh, how about the others? Can you hear others? Okay. Why don't? Excuse me. Could somebody help me with? Could you bring the microphone to here in the front, Mr.
Yes, my question is to Judith about the experience of The Guardian, which is quite unique in itself, and the growth of readership. Aren't you're popularizing the model, and then you have lots of people who are writing to comment is free and others. How is it compared to Huffington Post and others, other services catching up with? Is this the same thing, the same model is catching up, or do you see The Guardian remaining a unique service in itself as it is?
Is that specifically about comment is free, you mean?
Yeah, and you have Huffington Post, you have basically citizen journalism catching up somewhere with other people. I mean, the worry is, the question is rephrased, aren't you worried that somehow professional journalism becomes like citizen journalism?
That's always the worry with digital, and news is so easily available. People can just sort of cut and paste off the site. I mean, that's an ongoing worry. I think what the point that's been made here a couple of times is that there's a real difference between professional journalism. There's a lot of value to add, and what we assume is that readers can tell that difference. Maybe not with breaking news, perhaps not. Although I think after a while, once their news sources have got things wrong a couple of times, and they realise there's a value to go to the trusted news sources rather than just taking whatever's the latest on their Twitter feed. But we obviously rely on those Twitter feeds too, but we just check those things out a bit more. I mean, I can't really speak for Comment is Free because I'm not involved in it. But there's professional commentators on there too. There's not just sort of citizens quoting it. I don't think citizen journalism will ever take over from, I hope not, from professional journalism. But I understand your concern, yeah.
I would like to have some questions, like, is it okay for one by one, or whether we will get some questions and then you can have some time to prepare? Okay. I would like to get some 3 questions first, and then we will give the speakers to think about what they're going to respond. Okay. First, I would like, Mr.
My name is Mustafa Souag. I'm from Al Jazeera. I would like to ask the panelists and anybody in the room actually about what kind of training that media institutions are providing to their staff in this very rapid changing media environment with the new media platforms appearing practically every day, and what kind of changes that maybe media schools, universities should actually provide in their curriculum. I think this is one of the things that needs to be widely discussed, and I don't think it's discussed enough. I know, for example, in Al Jazeera, we are trying to provide the training to our staff, maybe sometimes in a very extensive way, but it's not enough. But in some other places that I know, there's no training whatsoever. So if Jonathan was talking about how some of the old journalists have just taken a good package and left, it's because maybe they didn't have training. They are afraid of the future. Thank you very much.
Okay. Later on. No.
Hang on.
Yeah, hang on. Okay. Okay. How about Mr.
Thank you. Tobias Kaiser from Die Welt in Berlin. I have a question for Judith. With your newspaper and website and news operation working in the English language, you have a certain advantage of the papers from other countries because you can transcend your home market and go abroad. And if I'm correct, actually more people in the US read The Guardian online than from the UK. Is that right?
No, I don't think it's quite right yet. I think it's, I'm not completely sure, to be honest.
But the real question is, you do have more markets than your established home market, and how does this change the culture of your paper and the way you work as a paper? Does this require investment from your side? Are you able to monetize on this increased audience? And how does the contents of journalism change with that? Thank you.
And the next question, yes.
My name is Wolfgang Mayer. I'm here for the International Federation of Journalists. I am employed and paid by employed by a regional newspaper, also in Germany. I think what Jonathan said is very important. That it is really dramatic how operations suffer from cutting staff, and I think it is really a question of capacities. What you, for instance, Judith told us, it is very ambitious and you need capacities to do this all. But this has to do with quality, and if staff is cut, then of course it is a problem. You get a problem with credibility and with quality. So I think it is a question of ownership also. Who owns the media? In Germany, we just had a loss of a very important paper, Financial Times Germany, and just a very important news agency was cut because the owners were people like hedge funds. And they were just interested in the profit. Judith, perhaps you can tell a little bit more about this trust, because this seems to be independent from this greed of profit from others, because you really need it. And it is a question to others about business models. I think in China it is not that greed, so that journalists are dismissed. It's my speculation. So you wouldn't have this problem, I think, but perhaps there are other private ownership business models or something like that which are helpful. Trusts is a very interesting model, I think, but I don't know. Perhaps you can tell more about this. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we will have our speakers to answer to the questions which were thrown by our three colleagues. First, how about what other trainings do you do to get them ready for this digital media? For Jonathan, you. Sure. Yeah, and then we will have interns with. Yeah.
No, it was not very good to begin with. In fact, it was awful. You would get somebody plucked out of the newsroom I don't know on what criteria, and sent off for training from somebody who spoke an entirely different language of the new technology, often very hard to understand the argot of these particular technologies. And the early years were very, very difficult. A lot of us learned by trial and error. That has changed a great deal. Certainly my company is much more purposeful about training now and about ensuring that the people who are dealing with new platforms of one sort or another are well trained in it. And we have very regular and consistent training programs. But it's taken a while, and it's taken a lot of trial and error to get there. What the colleges and universities are doing, I don't know. I just don't know at all what they're up to. But I think that most newspapers have come to realize that they have to put some serious training in. And I should just say, as somebody who works for a newspaper, that on the third question, a newspaper currently owned by a hedge fund, and that they have, I think, come to realize that they do have to, as I said in my presentation, they have come to realize that they have to have a product to sell. And if in the newspaper business, if you want to have a product, you've got to have the people who can produce it for you. But again, that's taken a number of years to sink home as well, and I don't think that story is over yet either.
How about Mr. Kang? 네. How do you have any special training sessions or trainings for your?
그럼 저희가 지금 뭐 기본적으로 신입 기자들한테 하는 교육은 딱히 뭐 디지털에 특화되거나 하거나 그렇진 않습니다. 기본적으로 기자들이 뭐 받아야 할 일반적인 트레이닝을 받고 있고, 뭐 여러 가지 이제 모바일 디바이스 이런 것들 쓸 때 그 필요한 정말 기본적인 수준만 가르치고 있는데, 근데 문제는 이런 커리큘럼에 대한 문제가 아니라 제일 중요한 거는 그 디지털에 대한 인식인 것 같습니다. 아무리가 저희가 뭐 디지털 뭐 동영상 편집을 교육을 시키고 뭐 멋진 사진 찍는 법, 직접 전송하는 법을 알려준다 해도 이거를 내가 해야 돼, 내가 직접 해야 돼, 그런 의무를 갖게 되면은 뭐 다 가르쳐 준 거 이게 의미가 없는 거거든요. 그래서 제 생각에는 그 정책적으로 회사에서 이 디지털에 대해 중요성을 인식시키고서 그러면 자연스럽게 우리 뭐 신입 기자나 아니면은 기존에 있던 기자들 같은 경우가 자연스럽게 따라갈 수 있으리라고 봅니다.
What's happening in China? Do you have? I mean, sorry for my lack of understanding, but you definitely have journalism schools in China, right? In the universities. Yeah. What do you think is? Since you are in the managing level, what do you want the schools, the professors, the schools you want them to be preparing the new students from the journalism schools in order to adapt to this digital journalism? What do you think the schools should do?
In our schools, students are discussing about the London riot report by the Guardian. That's by the Guardian Online, maybe in 2011. Yeah. So it's very important. Do you know it? No, I don't know. Not only students, but Chinese researchers are discussing about the report by the Guardian Online. But in Xinhua News Agency, we provide more training to the branch leaders more, because they are older, they are not familiar with the new media, just like me, and some of them refuse to to the new media technology. So maybe this is the difference. Thank you.
I suppose the only thing I have really to add is that I think it's obviously important that the journalism schools are discussing the new technologies and training people for that. But I think it can't really stop there because the technologies are changing all the time. So you can't sort of teach someone once and then they're taught. It's something that needs to be ongoing. And one of the things that we do at The Guardian is we have these sort of regular lunchtime sessions where a section will present a little bit about whatever it is they're doing. And, you can be taught how best to optimize your content for the search engines once, and then Google changes its formula, and so you have to learn again. So it's just an ongoing thing. I think it's important that media organizations kind of continually keep up to date.
And there were some questions directly, directed to Judith, so about the...
Oh yes, but how we react to the changing markets. I think when we first started publishing digitally, we just used to do whatever we would have done for the paper and put it on to the web, and not really think about going into the new markets. But that's sort of changing a lot. And the first big change is we've opened an office in America that's web only. It's kind of Guardian America and is looking for a Guardian audience. And in a way, that's a bit of a problem for us in London because now all our star American reporters are writing as if they were American reporters for Americans rather than if they were American reporters for Brits. And so the things they report is much smaller. The way they report it is angled towards a different audience, which is fine in America. But in the rest of the world, I think there's a problem in our... this is off the record, isn't it? I hope. I think it's no secret that the Foreign Desk feel that we lacking a kind of American news geared for a non-American audience. And we're about to open an office in Australia. I think that's public knowledge, I hope. I'm not really in with all the rules. But so we might have a similar problem there. And it is hard because obviously your news is completely different if you're reporting for the region you're in, or if you're just reporting from the region you're in, you write differently, you cover different things. And that's one of the Africa network that I showed you, that's one of the ways to try and kind of have more specialized reporting, not just for... Because it can be quite... our reporting of South Africa, we often get told that all we ever report is racial politics and there's a whole lot more going on. But there is a particular way you would report South Africa for Londoners, but it wouldn't be the same for South Africans. Yeah.
Can I just add that this seems to be a British phenomenon because other British outlets are doing, ones that I watch anyway, are doing very similar things, and all of a sudden you're seeing the BBC America and the Daily Mail and the Daily Telegraph, and I sometimes pick up the problem that you pointed to, that they seem to be writing for their domestic audience in the US or wherever else, and have lost track of their home audience. So, and that can shatter the whole operation in the end if it goes too far. Yeah, but it seems to be a British phenomenon. I haven't noticed it elsewhere.
Well, it's British colonialism. We're trying to conquer new markets.
Other questions?
There was one more about trust.
About the trust, right?
Yes, well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Daily Mail, because I think if we're all tracing online traffic, we know that there's one way to get more online traffic, and that is lots of celebrities, lots of gossip, lots of naked women. We could do that. Anyone can do that, but that sort of changes who you are. And the Daily Mail is, I think, now has more hits than we do. I think they're more successful than The Guardian is, but it's because their online presence is just so completely different to their paper. It's like they've completely given up their particular values that they have with the print version, and they just trace traffic with lots of photographs of cellulite and women and celebrity gossips. So we deliberately choose not to do that, and we do sometimes chase traffic, and we'll probably have more stories about Justin Bieber than are justified, and camels falling down wells and things, and those things do really well. But I think it's important to still do the proper journalism and to still kind of take it slowly. And trust is only something that's gained over time. It's not something that you'll just get overnight.
More questions? Comments? Yes, the lady in the front.
Thanks. My name is Miao Miao. I'm from China, People's Daily. And my question is, as the mobile devices is more important for people to get information, and I wonder whether the organizations have made any efforts to use the new devices. And in the speech of Johansson, I noticed the Vancouver Sun had made some efforts to use such ways, and I wonder whether you can give more specific introductions about this part, like through what form, like you develop new apps or something, and what form is more popular for the young people, like through people are willing to read articles on the mobile devices or like to watch videos on such things, and does it make money of it? Thanks.
And I think there was one other lady. Okay.
Hello, my name is Francisca. I'm from Portugal, from Público daily newspaper. And for us in Público, as for some universities in China, Guardian has been a huge reference. So my question is to Judith. I'm sorry to load you. What do you think it has been your recipe, or the thing that you focused more to achieve this magnificent site that you have now?
Okay,
My name is Ellen Wanjiro. I'm from NTV Uganda. NTV Uganda is a fairly young organization. It's a TV station. And we've just revived our website. It was launched and it was allowed to die, so to speak. So we've resuscitated it. I would like to tap into your experience. So I would like all of you to answer me. When you began, what is it that stood out for each of you? What would you advise me to look out for so that I avoid the pitfalls that you probably went through?
First, the lady from the China Daily. Yeah, she has asked questions about Mr. Jonathan. And also, I think after Jonathan, maybe Mr. Kang, you can also answer question. And give her some question. Answer. Okay. Jonathan?
I'm not the right person to give you a complete answer on these things. I know that we do produce apps. We produce a lot of them. We also have a huge raft of blogs. It's got to the point where some of them have been so successful, we sell them. Now, this is a new way of making money. You get a very successful blog, or you foster a very successful blog, and then you go and market it, sell it. We've done that, I think, with 2 or 3 blogs which had multi-million audiences, and so that's been actually quite a good little revenue earner. But basically, we keep on top of all, not only the technology developments, but the way it's used. And we have people who watch the development of new social media, and we pounce on those every time one comes up, and we make sure that our stories and are posted to those social media, and any other new platform that arrives, we see if we can incorporate it into our network. Basically, these days you have to use every opportunity that comes by and try to use it as best you can. I can't give you a more complete answer than that one, I'm afraid.
저희 한국에 아이폰이 2009년 말에 들어왔는데 이제 그 이후로 저희 같은 경우는 이제 모바일에 어느 무엇보다 가장 신경 많이 썼었습니다. 그런데 이제 모바일 아이폰 앱을 런칭을 하면서 한 6개월 정도 있다가 그 아이폰 앱의 일정 부분만을 유료화로 돌린 적이 있었습니다. 한 달에 $2 정도만 내면은 전체 앱을 쓸 수 있게끔 2010년 초에 2010년 3월 달에 이제 그렇게 유료로 전환을 했는데 그 유료로 전환하면서 사용자가 그러니까 사용자가 이 앱이 모두 전부 다가 유료라고 인식을 하면서 사용자가 급감을 했고 기존에 갖고 있는 그런 광고 수익마저도 확 줄어드는 사례가 있었습니다. 그래서 곧바로 이제 아차 싶어서 곧바로 다시 이제 무료로 전환을 했습니다. 6개월 만에 전환을 했는데 그 사례 보면서 아직까지는 이제 국내에서는 그런 모바일 유료화에 대해서 어려운 게 현실이라 느꼈던 게 사실이고 그래가지고 저희가 집중적으로 하고 있는 부분이 여러 가지 스마트폰이나 뭐 태블릿에서 그 광고를 얼마나 효과적으로 보여줄 수 있게 얼마나 효과적으로 보여줘야 하는 방법을 많이 찾고 있습니다. 그래가지고 여러분께서 직접 뭐 저희 앱을 찾아서 보시면 알겠지만 여러 군데 그 광고가 지금 노출되고 있습니다. 예를 들어 앱을 실행하자마자 광고가 뜨고 또 기사 내에 또 기사 말미에 또 그 섹션 초반에 여러 군데 광고를 심어가지고 좀 여러 가지 매출을 내려고 노력하고 있습니다. 그러면서 이제 광고를 이제 심으면서 제일 이제 고심해야 되는 게 사용자가 그 광고로 인해서 불편함을 느끼냐 그 한계치까지만 이렇게 하는 걸 지금 찾고 있는 과정입니다. 그러니까 아직까지 저희 상황에서는 아직까지는 유료화보다는 광고 모델을 우선시해야 되고 그 광고를 좀 효과적으로 수익을 낼 수 있는 방안을 찾는 것이 가장 중요한 거라고 생각합니다.
Does that answer your question? Okay. And
so there was the question about what the recipe is for the website. I don't know about a recipe, but if there's a buzzword, it would be open, and that's our decision has been to be as open as possible to the point where at some stage, I think this got abandoned, but our news lists that we draw up every day are available somewhere if you look for them, and it's all just about being open. We're launching, I think, later this week a new kind of UGC platform to get things in as well. And I've sensed a bit of hostility here, perhaps, to the sort of free for all or not charging for news content, which I understand, and also I can see that for other sites it might be more difficult than us. It's just the model we're going for at the moment, and the jury is still out on whether it works or not. But I suppose what I would say the most important thing is to be flexible and to be innovative and to be trying new things all the time, and some of them will fail, and just ditch them if they fail and try other things. And also to develop your own personality so that there's something very different between what you do and what everyone else does. So whatever that thing is that you have, The Guardian's got a very strong personality. Some people might call it brand, but I prefer the word personality. And I think that helps. Yeah.
One moment. How about some of your comments to the lady from Uganda? What are some of the ways you can?
Oh yes, the best. Yeah. Well, that was for everybody.
Yeah,
perhaps.
for everyone.
We'll start over there.
Starting from, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start if you like. I mean, I'm not sure I have anything very useful to say, because I think that one of the things that is very obvious and becoming ever more obvious is that different cultures react to these new technologies in different ways. I mean, I noticed quite a dramatic difference between the way Canadian readers have responded to paywalls and the way my colleague from South Korea was talking about the reactions here. Clearly, the Canadian audience is much more willing to pay for content and pay for news than perhaps the audience here in South Korea. And I think the only thing I'd say, and it sounds mundane and silly, but I think one has to approach this thing in the same way that one would have to approach it with a print newspaper, and that is, any successful newspaper has to swim in the mainstream of its society. And the same is true for these new technologies. And how you use them and what you use and in what form has to be dictated by your audience and what they want and what they use. And as we already know, I mean, the way new technologies are used in Africa generally are dramatically different from what is happening elsewhere in the world. I mean, in many ways, there's a good deal more imagination being applied to the use of these new technologies in Africa than is happening elsewhere. And all I can say is be true to your audience.
그러니까 제가 하고 있던 일 중에 메인 일이 그런 여러 가지 앱들 기획하고 닷컴에 대해서 기획하는 일을 맡고 있는데 그 하면서 지금 최근에도 여러 가지 개편 작업을 하고 있는데 가장 중요하게 생각하는 게 저희가 아니라 사용자를 봐야 된다는 거. 그러니까 지금까지 특히 이제 앱을 만들면서 좀 화려하고 멋있고 이런 중심으로 좀 눈에 띄는 앱을 만들려고 했었는데 막상 사용자들 불만은 너무 과하다, 너무 많다. 내가 보고 싶은 건 뉴스인데 왜 이렇게 이것저것 많이 있냐. 그런 의견을 많이 들어가지고 최근에 이제 뭐 앱이나 모바일 웹이나 앱 같은 걸 개편할 때 가장 중시하는 거 심플하게 그리고 동시에 사용자를 생각해서 만드는 거. 그게 가장 중요하다고 생각합니다.
Whether content is king or not, content is very important. But as you know, every person has become media hub itself, and they can provide very good contents themselves. So we'd better try to reorganize the content from microblogs, blogs, and etc. to provide more good content. Thank you.
I think what I'd say is don't try to do everything at once, so don't try to do it all too soon. Maybe focus, see how much capacity you have and focus on what you can do and do that really well. I think at The Guardian we do too much sometimes. We put out thousands of things a day. I think I've never counted, but some of the stories or videos we put out only get a few hundred hits. Some of them get a few 100,000, and so I think don't certainly initially go for the low-hanging fruit. Do what you know will work, and then you can build on that. Yeah.
Okay, and we have a question. Yeah.
This is a question. This is not a question. Rather, these are comments about the social media and commercial media. I think with the advancement of technology, social media has become very powerful. It is becoming more and more powerful than commercial media. We have recently seen the history when social media impacted and it changed the course of history in Egypt and Arab Spring, and also in Pakistan. I belong to Pakistan. My name is Liakatur. I am deputy editor of Pakistan Observer. In Pakistan, we have seen that with the passage of time, with the advancement of technology, I think social media has become very powerful. It is impacting the political course of the history in Pakistan. So my question is this, or rather my comments, or it's question for all of my friends there sitting on the rostrums, that with the more advancement of technology, I think youngsters, young generation throughout the world, they have access to the internet, and they are now more depending on Twitter and Facebook and everything. So do you think time is not coming when social media will take over commercial media? As my friend from China said that everybody has become journalist, everybody is generating information. For example, he said that when there was an earthquake there in China, there was a lot of information emanating from that area. So my question is this: do you think the time is coming when social media can take over commercial media? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And excuse me. Here's another. Yeah. One more question.
Good afternoon. My name is Tawfiq Ali. I'm from Bangladesh. I work with a national English daily called the Daily Star. Apparently, I come from a region which is rather slow in shifting to technological challenges. Just a little note, a small note of observation that I, as a media practitioner and as a common man, very recently have been observing the change that is, even though slow, but inevitably is taking place, particularly in the media domain. We have a quite good number of television channels, mostly run privately, and apparently trying sincerely to cope up with the demand, the audience demand, in the light of the technological advancement and facilities, the digital facilities. There are upcoming radio stations with a kind of revival. We had radio stations popular in the yesteryears, but they disappeared for a quite long time. But they're making comeback, probably with the blessing of the digital advancement, and also perhaps market demand. There are considerable use of coverages of mobile telephones at present, and it is consistently on the rise, the use of mobile telephones. Having said that, as a practitioner, as a working journalist, as a reporter, I'm a bit worried at the same time, being quite hopeful and fully knowing of the blessings and the advantages, the benefits, tremendous benefits that the digital devices offer to us. The worry is whether there is a trend in the digital media to provide the content in as scarcey manner as possible, especially the news content, like television and mobile phones. Do you, my questions are addressed to the panel as a whole, do you recognize any challenge of making the audience superficial, kind of frivolous with these scarcey, almost invariably scarcey contents? That's one. Another is, may sound quite a mundane question, kind of insipid. Do you find any future of the newspaper, the hard paper, at all? And the third, we are in Bangladesh in a very nascent stage of the transition, very nascent stage. We are facing a very serious concrete challenge of shifting from the paper to the virtual. That is the cultural and the traditional mindset of the audience. As far as business is concerned, do you have any recommendations or any experience to share on how to prepare the audience and change their mindset to make them pay for the virtual content? Thank you.
Okay, the question which was thrown to us, the first, okay, this is going to be the last question from the floor, and then we'll get our speakers to answer.
Hello? Yes, I'm Brian Bonita, and I'm from the Jamaica Observer in Kingston, Jamaica. This question is, there's no way we can ignore the social media, Twitter and Facebook, but how much should a company or a news entity invest in these new media and the use of it, and will this ultimately translate into more readership / profit? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. And the question or the comment which was thrown by our colleagues about whether the social media could take over the commercial media in the future. What do you think about that? So this is okay.
그 소셜 미디어 관련해서는 한국에서도 지금 크게 영향력을 끼치고 있습니다. 그런데 지금 예를 들어 뭐 소셜 미디어를 통해 뭐 트위터나 페이스북, 기타 등등의 소셜 미디어를 통해 예를 들어 감동적인 이야기 아니면은 뭔가 불법적인 이야기를 발견해서 그 소셜 미디어를 통해 가지고 확산되면서 그게 하나의 지금 뉴스가 되고 그것을 다시 이제 기존 언론이 이제 받아 쓰는 사례도 많이 있었습니다. 그런데 지금 그 질문하신 그런 소셜 미디어와 관련 기존 미디어를 넘어갈 수 있냐 그렇게 물어보실 때 저 같은 경우는 아니라고 대답을 할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 그 예를 들어 지금 그런 여러 가지 소셜 미디어 상에서 그런 뉴스화됐던 사건화됐던 것들이 결국 거짓으로 판명된 경우가 되게 많았거든요. 단지 루머의 확산, 그 루머의 확산이 어떻게 보면 소셜 미디어의 한 역할인데 그런 거 봤을 때 분명 이런 거에 대해서 확인해주고 그 사실 확인을 해주는 게 언론의 역할이라고 생각합니다. 이런 점을 비춰볼 때 그 기존 언론이 갖고 있는 역할도 계속 유지될 거라고 보고 소셜 미디어는 소셜 미디어대로 영향력을 발휘할 것이라고 봅니다.
Okay.
I would agree. I would say social media is, for the last little while, has been a maker of news rather than a carriage of news. You mentioned the Arab Spring, but we've also had a lot of social problems created by social media in North America, and I think in Europe they have as well. Things like what is called online bullying and stuff like this. Social media is proving to be sometimes a very dangerous social distorter, and I think that the problem, if it is a problem at this point, confronting societies is not necessarily social media taking over from commercial media, but the effects that social media are having, particularly on young people in some societies. So, as I say, I think social media is more a creator of news at this point than a usurper of that sector.
My Pakistan friend, I'll discuss with you the social media. It's a big data day here. Social media can provide huge numbers of data, but big data is useless unless you can find some valuable info from the big data. I think the key point is how to find the valuable info from the big data provided by the social media. For example, we work with Tsinghua University recently to use word cloud, a new technology, to analyze the government data to provide some interesting things for medias and organizations. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with my colleagues. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think they can feed each other. I must say, I think that's one of the reasons why it's good not to have a paywall, because you can use social media, you can interact more easily with social media. Obviously, the conventional reporters, journalists often use social media to get information about things. It needs to be verified, and I think users are not that stupid, and they do know the difference between a rumor spread on Twitter or something that actually reported on the BBC. So I don't think the one will take over from the other.
Does that answer your question? I mean, I think it could trigger a very important movement, or what we have witnessed in Egypt and other parts of the world, how the SNS is triggering and also bringing the changes to a more closed countries. And I think the role of the SNS will increase, but I think the role of the media is, I think the journalism is getting more important because of what it is, as somebody has mentioned, it is going to be the filtering or which will be giving the meanings or the interpretation to comments on what's happening and what's circulated and verify what is being circulated through the SNS. And our colleague from Bangladesh has asked 3 questions, but I think we will, our speakers will just pick 1 or 2, 1 each, just 1, whatever you want, and then I think we are running out of time, so after each of us pick 1 of the questions from the floor, then I would like to wrap up the session. First, I would like to go, anyone from, what do you think about do you think there will be paper in the future still? Do you think we will have this papers in the morning to...
How far advanced are we talking about the future?
Yeah, what would you say?
3? I think the papers that are mostly under pressure are the daily papers, and perhaps the weekend papers have got a longer life, but I don't know.
I think metropolitan daily papers, it's different in North America because our cities are more widely spread out than in Europe, and so we tend to have, rather than national papers, we have metropolitan daily papers. And they, like mine, they are under pressure. They are enormously. But one of the things that maybe I misheard you, I hope not, I thought you were asking about whether stories were being slimmed down to fit the new mediums, and that we weren't dealing with stories in such great depth as we did in the past. Actually, I've found the opposite. I've found that what my paper wants now is for longer columns from me than were in the past, because the paper is becoming the carriage for analysis, for commentary, for context. And so, and the news, the instant response to events is going out on the digital media. So my columns now, which a couple of years ago or so, I was restricted to about 650 words. I can now happily do 800 words, and the editors are delighted. So actually, it's the reverse, because the newspaper, is performing a somewhat different role. It's no longer a general news carriage. It's much more a carriage for commentary, for analysis, and for context than it was. So in some ways, that's an advance.
아까 제가 보여드린 자료에 보면 제가 다니는 조선일보 같은 경우가 그 240만 부에서 180만 부로 떨어지기까지 대충 10년 걸렸다 했는데, 저희 회사 같은 경우가 지금 어떻게 보면은 한국 내에서 리딩 회사이기 때문에 속도가 비교적 늦은 편입니다. 지금 다른 신문사 같은 경우 부수 감소 속도가 더 빨라지고 있는 상황을 비춰볼 때, 솔직히 종이신문 자체에 대한 미래는 불확실한 것 같습니다. 하지만 종이신문은 그렇지만 그 신문에 있는 콘텐츠 자체는 더 유지되고 더 많이 확산되고, 그리고 그걸 통해 가지고 저희 나름대로 영향력을 유지하고 수익을 낼 수 있을 거라고 보고 있습니다.
Who knows the answer? 10 months ago, when I established the new media center of Xinhua News Agency, my friend Ma Yun, the founder of Alibaba and Taobao, asked me, "What will you do? Internet business? It's dead." I told him I will focus on wireless internet. He said, "Yes, it's the business." Thank you.
Okay, and to wrap, I would like to give maybe 1 minute for each, less than 1 minute, last comments from the speakers to close this session. And I would like to hear, if it's possible, why do you think we still have, this is not a crisis, but opportunity for the journalism? Okay. And then we'll be, I hope that this will be included in your last comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I suppose also to address some of the last questions, it's definitely an opportunity, not a crisis, because there's just so much more we can do and so many more ways that we can do it in. My colleague from Jamaica asked how much should his company invest and will it translate into readers and money. I think, only he knows how much it should invest, but and whether it will translate into money, we don't know, but it will certainly translate into readers, and we have loads more of those. We can also tell who's reading our stuff and who's not. We can respond to readers. We can just be much more flexible and available. We can hear from what people want. I think if you involved at all in the NGO world or in anything outside of media, you always hear people talking about the mainstream media, and the mainstream media are to blame for all of the world's ills because we support a particular power structure and we only give voice to a certain section of the population. I think the internet allows us to really open up more than that and to explore different sides of debates without having to come to an opinion on them. And I certainly don't think that it makes our coverage more superficial, because we can carry these long stories in a paper, 2,000-word pieces that no one's going to read to the end, or you can take that and you can translate it into visually accessible graphics or interactives that you can put on the web that you can take your readers along with you and make a really strong point and highlight whatever it is that you want to in a very powerful visual way.
Thank you.
I believe content is still the king. Content is still the king no matter how you get the information. Internet, or wireless internet, anything else. Thank you.
I'm sorry for bothering you from the transportation. Anyway, SNS가 기회라고 생각하는 이유 중에 첫 번째 생각하는 거는 SNS는 정보라 생각하면 정보라 하면은 기사가 더 많이 생길 수 있는 이유이기도 하고, 동시에 그 SNS를 통한 피드백을 통해서 그 기사가 더 정확해지고 더 풍부해질 수 있다고 보기 때문에 SNS는 저희 언론에 있어서 커다란 기회라고 생각합니다.
I would agree with everything that's been said, and as I said in my presentation, the message is the message, and is now and always will be. And we will find a way of getting a revenue stream out of it. There are a lot of incredibly bright people working on this and have been working on it for several years. And the models will probably be different in various communities. They will fit the way the audience behaves, but models will emerge that allows good journalism to continue and flourish. It's going to be a bit painful, but it's also an exciting time, and I'm sure the outcome will be good.
Thank you very much for the four speakers and all the floor and all the people, our colleagues from all over the world. And I think we are all facing the common challenge in this digital media, where we are heading and whether the future of the media is, do we have a future there? Do we have an opportunity? I think most of us want to believe, and I think we have a belief that there is a future and there is something where always will be where the media has to do their role. And thank you very much, and I hope that you will enjoy your stay here in Seoul, Korea. Thank you. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the World Journalists Conference, I'd also like to extend another thank you to our speakers and our moderator. Again, Kim Gyun-mi, Judith Seol, Lee Jun, Kang Kyung-min, Jonathan Walter Manthorpe. Again, thank you. I'd like to give them another round of applause. Thank you. Okay, we're going to be taking a short 20-minute coffee break, and then we will reconvene in this room for another special lecture. This will be provided by the president of the Korea Foundation, so I do hope you are able to participate in that as well. Thank you so much. Please stretch and bathroom break and coffee break, tea break, and we'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be starting our special session in just a moment. If you could go to your seats, please. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the special ceremony, the special session rather. We have a special speaker we're going to be inviting up to the stage, but before that, you have received a survey or questionnaire, and on behalf of the Journalists Association of Korea and the World Journalists Conference, we would very much appreciate if we could get your feedback on what you think and what your opinions are on the current environment, working environment as a journalist. And because we are here from all over the world, we would really appreciate your insight and love to hear what you feel and what your opinions are from each country. So do hope you have a chance to fill that out as you for the remainder of the time. And if you could drop off your questionnaires at the registration desk outside when we leave the building, when we go to the National Assembly, I think that would be the perfect time to do so. And with that said, with the announcement, next up, I'd like to invite a special guest, Kim Woo-sang, the president of the Korea Foundation, to deliver a special lecture. This is for the special session. For reference, the Korea Foundation is an institution that strives to promote a better understanding of Korea within the international community and to increase friendship and goodwill between Korea and the rest of the world through various exchange programs. President Kim Woo-sang has taught at Texas A&M University in the USA, Korea's Sungmyeong Women's University, and Yonsei University. He also served as the former ambassador to Australia for 3 years from 2008 and was appointed to lead the Korea Foundation since 2012. Today's special lecture will discuss, as you can see, Middle Power Korea's public diplomacy. With that said, I'd like to now invite Mr. Kim Woo-sang up to the stage. Please welcome him with a big round of applause. Thank you.
My dear friend, Mr. Park Jong-yu, President of the Journalists Association of Korea, distinguished journalists around the world, and ladies and gentlemen, It is my great pleasure to have an opportunity to share my view on the importance of Korea's international cooperation and people-to-people exchange on many issue areas, including culture and arts, political economy, and journalism. I do believe Korea playing the pivotal middle power leadership role in the global society is one of our key foreign policy strategies, and international cooperation and people-to-people exchange are the major means to play that role of pivotal middle power. As a matter of fact, the current Park Geun-hye government has designated Korea's playing the responsible middle power role in the global society as one of the primary foreign policy tasks. Before I joined the diplomatic circle in 2008, I have been spending 20-some years in teaching and researching international relations and foreign affairs. And during my academic life, I have been advocating Korea's pivotal middle power role as the Asia-Pacific region and also at the global stage. As the Korean ambassador to Australia from 2008 to 2011, I was lucky to have practical experience of middle power cooperation between Korea and Australia. In 2008, then Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd began to argue for Australia playing pivotal middle power role in the Asia-Pacific region. I had several occasions to meet him and discuss the middle power cooperation, especially between two countries. When I was in Canberra, two leaders of Korea and Australia held summit meetings 14 times, including 3 standalone summit meetings, as well as frequent telephone calls between those two leaders. One example of the successful bilateral middle power cooperation during my stay in Canberra must be the G20 summit meeting. Two leaders' cooperation helped establish G20 summit instead of G8, the major regular international forum to deal with world financial crisis, in which the experienced middle powers' voices can be heard. Nowadays, public diplomacy becomes a very effective measure to create better diplomatic environment for a country. More and more countries began to emphasize the importance of their public diplomacy. Korea is not an exception. As president of Korea Foundation, the leading Korean institution for public diplomacy affiliated with the foreign ministry, I come to realize that one of the best ways of Korea carrying out its public diplomacy is to play the middle power leadership role in the global society. Later, I'll explain why it is the case in more details. Now, let me briefly talk about Korea's foreign policy strategies. Like many other countries in the region, Korea faces many challenges from global, regional, and peninsula level. At the global level, Korea faces challenges related to the current world financial crisis, climate change, green growth, sustainable development, natural disasters, refugees, to mention a few. And these are all human security-related challenges. At the regional level, we all talk about the rise of China and its potential impact on the global and regional security architecture. Countries in the Asia-Pacific region also experience territorial disputes, and the past history issues get more and more attention. At the peninsula level, now as you feel, Korea faces serious security threats from the North Korean nuclear weapons programs. To deal with these challenges, I suggest 3 coherent foreign policy strategies. First of all, as you may guess, there's no doubt that Korea at present and Korea in the future needs to maintain strong military alliance relationship with the United States. In fact, most of the Korean people share the view that Korea-US alliance relationship is the main pillar of the Korean foreign policy. Secondly, the Korea-China economic strategic partnership and friendly ties between the two countries become more and more important. Korea's economic and trade relationship with rapidly rising China is remarkable. Currently, the trade volume between the two is larger than some of our trade volume with the United States and with Japan. And this trend will continue in the years to come. Sharing border with China, I mean almost sharing border with China, Korea has to maintain a strong economic strategic partnership with China. Actually, some of us worry about potential contradiction on our relationships with the United States and with China. However, I strongly believe that Korea's strong economic and trade relationship with China does not contradict with our alliance ties with the United States. Strong economic ties with China will provide a favorable position for Korea to improve its alliance ties with the United States on a more equitable basis. At the same time, our strong alliance ties with the United States will provide Korea with leverage to negotiate stronger economic ties with China on an equal basis. Thirdly, Korea's active middle power engagement in various human security issues with other like-minded middle power countries in multilateral settings will provide Korea's more balanced foreign policy environment. Before explaining why Korea's middle power leadership is helpful for Korea to balance its foreign policy environment, let me explain briefly the definition of middle power. Well, there is no universally agreed upon definition of middle power. At least I can suggest that it needs to satisfy two criteria: the capability and willingness. Briefly speaking, a middle power country must have enough capabilities to meaningfully influence regional affairs, and at the same time have the intention of actively engaging in regional and global affairs for peaceful resolutions in international disputes, facilitating multilateral solutions to global issues, and demonstrating good international citizenship. Through ad hoc coalition with like-minded countries in multilateral institutions, a middle power can play certain roles to promote concerted efforts of making the regional and global society more peaceful and prosperous. Korea's integration into the global economy, its emergence as a democratic state, and its increasing importance in the global society are recognized. Recently, Korea has played meaningful middle power leadership roles in global societies. Within a short period of time, Korea has developed from one of the poorest countries in the world into one of the top 10 largest economies, top 10 strongest militaries, and top 20 most democratic countries in the world. Korea made an unparalleled move from a recipient of overseas development assistance to a donor country. It will also steadily increase the level of the ODA, official development assistance, currently from 0.12% of the GNI to 0.25% by 2015. Korea recently joined 2050 clubs as the 7th member in the world. The 2050 club meaning 20,000 GDP per capita and 50 million people, 50 million population size. Korea hosted successfully the 1988 Summer Olympic Games and co-hosted 2002 Soccer World Cup. And performances in recent 2 consecutive Olympics have been exceptionally good. We ranked 8th and 5th, if I remember correctly, on gold medal numbers. Korea will also host the 2018 Winter Olympic Games in Pyeongchang in Gangwon Province. Korea produced international leaders such as the current UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, and now we are the member of Security Council. And Korea successfully hosted the G20 summit in 2010 and the 4th high-level forum on aid effectiveness in 2011 and the nuclear security summit in 2012. And Korea was selected to host the GCF, Green Climate Fund, and led to establish the Global Green Growth Institute. Korea participates very actively in many other human security areas, including the UN peacekeeping operations, anti-piracy operations, non-proliferation, refugee, natural disaster relief, and so forth. Korea shares its unique experiences of successful economic development and democratization with many developing countries around the world through various knowledge-sharing programs. Now, why Korea's middle power leadership role is helpful for Korea to balance its foreign policy environment. Korea, geopolitically surrounded by great powers' sphere of influence, can balance out potential great powers' influences only through active middle power engagement. By playing a middle power leadership role in multilateralism, Korea's foreign policy environment and its strategic position will be more balanced, stable, and advantageous. Many say Korea is one of the major powers in the world. I consider that Korea is not a major power. Unless Korea actively participates, engages in regional and global affairs, surrounded by 3 great powers, Korea will always be considered a small power in the relative sense. Only by playing a middle power leadership role, Korea will, in many different ways, get more equitable respect in the regional and global arena. Only by playing a middle power leadership role together with other like-minded middle powers in the region or in the multilateralism, the middle power can raise their voices together and balance out each of their could-be lopsided bilateral relationships with any great power. Most of the middle power roles contain aspects of humanitarian or humanistic, ethical, moralistic, altruistic, you use all the good words, sacrificing and peace-loving activities. Thus, the more Korea plays middle power leadership role, the greater the chances it will be able to do good and be respected by the global citizens and be better known by global society. In that respect, playing a middle power leadership role itself can be one of the best forms of conducting its public diplomacy. Korea's contribution to the global society will also increase the chance of peaceful resolution of the Korean Peninsula problem. With strong support of world opinion in the near future, the Korean Peninsula may be peacefully united under democratic term. Now, let me briefly introduce the Korea Foundation, what we do. And before I do that, let me show you our video footage. Can you turn on the video footage?
The Korea Foundation's mission is to make friends with the peoples of countries around the world, particularly The Korea Foundation at this time strives to expand its cooperative relations with the Middle Power nations to play a leading role among these countries. Under this program, the Korea Foundation provides a forum to share ideas on key global issues, to bring together specialists from within and outside Korea, and to help enhance the well-being of people and nations worldwide. The Korea Foundation develops future-oriented partnerships with like-minded nations through a variety of public diplomacy initiatives, such as the KF Global Seminar, which brings together distinguished global figures and next-generation leaders to discuss vital global issues and to share their expertise. In addition, the KF Forum broadens awareness of today's critical social issues through the arrangement of relevant seminars and lectures, while the National Development Vision Sharing Program provides a means to share Korea's expertise in economic development with the world's developing countries. With its support for Korean studies, the Korea Foundation enables the international community to acquire a deeper understanding of Korea and its people in an effort to develop closer friendships with the world's peoples. The Korea Foundation is building an extensive infrastructure for education and research on Korea through the KF Global eSchool program that enables students to learn about Korea from anywhere and at any time, with online video lectures, and the establishment of Korean studies professorships at universities around the world. The KF Assembly, a platform for academic exchange and networking among Korean study scholars, along with support for Korea-related academic conferences, seminars, workshops, and fellowships, contribute to an advancement of the global community's understanding of Korea. The Cultural and Arts Exchange Program provides a framework to share Korea's culture and spirit with the world, in addition to offering opportunities for global citizens to appreciate cultural diversity. The Korea Foundation seeks to reinforce Korea's bonds with the world's peoples and countries through global cooperation and friendly relations. Examples of these efforts include the KF Day events, which are staged at renowned museums to make known the richness of Korean culture. The Curator Workshop Program, that enables curators from abroad to learn about the intricacies of Korea's artistic culture and facilitate networks among them. The staging of various exhibitions and performances to introduce the arts and culture of Korea to global audiences. And the Cultural Center Project, that introduces the Korean people to the cultures around the world. The Korea Foundation's Publications and Media program has contributed to Korea's building friendly ties with the peoples around the world by enhancing understanding of Korean culture and society. The Korea Foundation produces a wide range of video content on the culture and arts of Korea, along with distributing Korea-related publications and video materials to some 750 universities, libraries, and research institutions in 96 countries. The Foundation's media efforts include The Koreana, a quarterly journal with features on Korea's arts and culture, the Korea Focus webzine, that provides readers with a glimpse of the current affairs in Korea, so that global viewers can enjoy aspects of Korea's contemporary and traditional culture. Through its Public Diplomacy Program, Support for Overseas Korean Studies Program, Cultural and Arts Exchange Program, and the Publication and Media Program, the Korea Foundation has been building and maintaining friendly relations with the peoples around the world for the last 2 decades. The Korea Foundation intends to continue its efforts to strengthen global friendship and goodwill, leaving a lasting impression on the hearts and minds of people around the world.
Okay, did you enjoy the video footage? Wake you up? So now you know a little bit about what we do, what I do as a president of the Korea Foundation. The Korea Foundation is the leading independent non-profit institution for Korea's public diplomacy. As I've said, it is affiliated with the Foreign Ministry. The main mission of the Korea Foundation is to make friends of Korea around the world by promoting our traditional and modern arts and culture, Korean studies including language, history, contemporary political economy, and people exchanges, including hosting many bilateral forums and invitation programs for opinion leaders from various countries. As a matter of fact, we already set up more than 113 chair professor position, Korean professor position for Korean studies in many universities around the world. We actually provide support for almost 150 universities around 70 countries in the world, providing professor position, also sending out tenure track position, chair position. We also send visiting scholars for teaching. We also provide scholarships and fellowships for students who want to study on Korea. And we also provide support for people like you who want to visit Korea and stay here for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year to learn more about Korea. So we have those programs. We also have invitation programs. Like this time, we support my good friend, Mr. Park, the president, through this invitation program. We invite almost 1,500 leaders and journalists and scholars and young people from all over the world. Show them around Korea and also provide them opportunity to build their own network in Korea. The main mission of us is to make friends of Korea. So we try to do everything to make friends of Korea. We provide support for major museums around the world. We set up Korea Gallery in prestigious museums like Metropolitan Fine Arts in Boston, Louvre, Great British Museum. In all those big museums, we have a Korea Gallery, and we also provide other support. For example, curator programs and other internship programs to many institutes around the world. In DC and in London and in Stockholm, everywhere in the world. So we do many different kind of programs and projects to support global citizens so that they can have a better chance to know more about Korea. Currently, the so-called Korea Wave is very popular. Worldwide, there is a fairly strong interest among university students in learning the Korean language and Korean studies. If I give you an example, very recently I had the opportunity to visit Czech Republic and Charles University. There were used to be one course for Korean language. That course is a credit course and for 20 students. But last year, about 500 students wanted to be enrolled in the course. And La Roche University in France, there are about 30 student courses for credit. But about 350 students want to be enrolled in that class to learn about Korea. So I see there is a big demand going on. And I believe it is a perfect timing for Korea Foundation to carry out our own mission. The current Korea fever, however, may not last long. We do not know how long it will last. So when many young people around the world show their interest in Korea and its arts and culture, including K-pop, the Korean movies and dramas and animations, the Korea Foundation has to provide opportunities for them to encounter contemporary Korea and learn about Korean culture and arts, Korean tradition and history, and modern Korean society. Finally, what needs to be done to let more global citizens know more about Korea? For past 21 years, our foundation was set up in 1991, so it's 22 years old. So for past 22 years, the Korean Foundation has been very successful in providing various programs to intellectuals, especially in great powers, including United States, Japan, China, for them to be more knowledgeable about Korea and to become friends of Korea. But we'll carry out these proven to be efficient programs to more partner countries, including middle powers and developing countries. Try to reach out to more people in the global society. In addition, we will carry out the Korea signature programs for Korean studies and public diplomacy, including the Global E-School program, Korea Foundation Global Seminar, and Korea Foundation Festivals. And this year, we are going to host the Korea Foundation Festival in the ASEAN countries, including Indonesia, Philippines, Myanmar, Thailand, many countries. And we will also host Korea Foundation Day in Metropolitan Museum and in San Francisco Asian Museum as well. As president of the Korea Foundation, I hope that this World Journalist Conference we support become an opportunity for all of you prominent journalists from all over the world to understand more about Korean culture and society and people, as well as Korean government policy. Furthermore, I also hope that your experience of Korea during your stay and during the conference provide you some good reasons for you to come and visit again and become best friends of Korea and play a key role on introducing Korea to your own societies. If there is anything that I can do to help you to play that role, I'll do my best to support you in every possible way. So please contact me if you need me. With that promise, I'll now open the floor for Q&A for maybe 10, 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I wonder if you could talk a bit more about how you see in your words, the lack of conflicts developing between your increasingly important economic relationship with China and your equally important security alliance with the United States. I find it a fascinating question, and I wonder what elements you see in that and how you're going to deal with it.
Well, some may not agree with my view, but I strongly, some argue, the overlapping is not good. It will, contradict each other. So it should be mutually exclusive. But to me, I do not see any contradiction, because if your counterpart is a great power, and you are not a great power, then you are always in a disadvantageous position. You have to maintain very strong military alliance with the United States for Korea's own security insurance. We all know for sure. But if you look at our economic trade volume with China, as I said, it's a number one trading partner, and trade volume is much bigger than many other countries. Some of the many other countries. So to be prosperous, we need to maintain these two very important relationships. Okay? But also, again, China is a great power to Korea. Dealing with these two great powers at the same time, Chinese may have different view. Americans may not have trust on us, but we have to make them. We have to tell the intellectuals in US and also in China that having Korea having strong alliance ties with the US and at the same time having strong economic relationship with China is not a bad thing. We can play some kind of role in between China and the United States. We do not want to see Chinese and Americans fighting against each other. It'll be a disaster for Korea. We know for sure. So there is some room for us to play the role, and by having and you know, I mean, you ask American leaders or Chinese leaders, they are not going to be happy if we move toward one and move away from another. You know? So we, by having strong ties with the US, can send some message to China so that Chinese can treat us better. And we also, by increasing our strong economic partnership, can send some good messages to US so that Americans can treat us better. Because we are always a weaker partner to China and to United States. And if you have those two strategies, it's a very probably not so stable. You know, to make it stable, you need another leg. So a tri-leg will be very much stable, and one is Korea playing middle power role to cooperate with other like-minded group of middle power countries to raise voices together, yeah, to deal with this issue. If we can have similar voices toward China, toward the United States, yeah, we can be in a much more balanced situation. That's the reason why I have been arguing for more than 20 years that Korea must be one of the middle power countries to play important role together. Middle power alone can never play important role. Middle power, like-minded groups of middle power together can play important roles. And as I said, important role has something to do with peaceful and prosperous things for the society, whether it's global or regional. Always has something to do with the humanitarian, ethical, sacrificing, contributive, peace-loving kind of roles. Mostly, there are some roles that the great power may not be able to play because unintentionally, great power could intimidate neighboring countries or third parties or smaller powers. But middle powers, several middle powers together can play that kind of role for the goodness of the society. So in that sense, Americans will understand why we have to have strong economic ties with China. And Chinese will understand why Korea has to maintain strong ties with the United States, as long as we can provide good explanations. And I do believe that we are very successful in doing so.
We had a question in the center. It's Mike.
Yes, please.
First of all, let me say that congratulations to you. You are a very salesman and you are selling Korea very effectively. And I think so. The programs you have started with the help of the foundation, I think it's very effective. My question is this: you have talked about ASEAN countries, and I think globalization of Korea is an important subject in Pakistan. Is there any program of establishing linkages with Pakistan under this program? I mean, foundation has any plan to have linkages with Pakistan? Thank you.
Well, we, as I explained to you a bit, we have people-to-people invitation programs, and each year, I think that at least one or two Pakistani intellectuals or leaders or scholars visit Korea and look for Korea for the first time, yeah, and get to know more about Korea and go back. And we do also provide support to Korean embassy in Pakistan so that Korean embassy in Pakistan can host cultural events, artistic events in Pakistan. So in that way, yes, we do have ties with Pakistan. So we deal with almost 170, 180 countries around the world. My ambassadors overseas, in Korean embassies overseas, they are very nice to me because they have to get support from me. So whenever I visit those countries, they are very nice to me. Yeah.
Yes, hello, Thomas Seifert, Wiener Zeitung from Vienna. Going back to the question of my colleague before, this one, I'm interested in the relationship between South Korea and Japan at this point in time. Of course, it has been influenced by the recent developments in the north, but also we had also new government both here and in Japan. So can you tell us what's going on, especially with the Dr. Takashima question and also the historical issues that are there on the table, and of course your common interest when it comes to North Korea?
I'm not in the position to talk about those political issues.
You did so before.
Right, the question must have directed to my Minister Yoon when he gave a speech during the luncheon period. But if I may make my own view just a little bit, I can say that I have strong belief that Japan is a great power, a responsible great power. As long as we deal with this past history issue, there is nothing in between Korea and Japan. We can be the most friendly countries around the world. We share so many things, common values, common interests. The only problem between us is past history. Right? So to deal with this past history, we cannot, because Japan made us suffer. So to deal with this past history, Japan has to come up front. And I have strong belief that Japan is responsible, great power enough to deal with this past history issue. Thank you. I don't know if it's answered your question or not, but yes.
It's obvious that you have a very strong drive for soft power, but you haven't mentioned anything about hard power. All you mention about hard power is your reliance on the United States, which is not bad if you want it, but do you have in your project, in addition to the soft power, you have a project for hard power? Because regardless of how long, one day you might need that.
Okay. Yes, we do pay. I mean, we as a Korea, per se, do pay attention to both hard power and soft power, and the mixture of those two to make them to become a smart power. Okay, but my job is on the soft power side. I don't care about hard power side. That's for other people, right? I only focus on. I do focus everything except political issues and economic and trade issues. So I try to focus on the other side of the coin. Thank you. Yes.
Just as a follow-up to the previous question, I understand probably this is not your cup of tea as you're involved with soft power, but if we spell out the notion of hard power, now there's a lot of talk that probably this Korean crisis would force South Korea to reconsider its defense strategy, specifically that South Korea would have to go nuclear as well as Japan. So how valid are those prospects? This is the second question, the first question. And the second question is that there's a lot of talk of reunification, even there's a ministry of reunification. But in practical terms, is it a metaphor or this is really a possibility, probably in the long run, in 20 years, 30 years? And if the day comes when you have just to think of one Korea. So how are you going to handle this issue? Because this is not only great opportunity, but a great challenge. And we know what happened with Germany when Berlin Wall fell. So all in all, when Korean Wall falls, so are you ready just to emerge as another united Korea, as a Asian global powerhouse? Thank you.
Okay, getting tougher and tougher. The first one, Korea to become nuclear power? No, I do not think so. As I said, I am advocating Korea playing middle power role, right, for more than 20 years. I'm academic, I'm scholar, although I have some diplomatic practice on another hand, but in my heart, I'm the scholar, and I have been arguing Korea playing middle power role to be prosperous. And if you decide to have nuclear weapons, then it is against the idea of becoming a middle power. Middle power must be humanitarian, as I said, humanistic, moralistic, ethical, not so much nuclear power, weapons related, right? Support for non-proliferation and all those. That's one thing. Second, I do not think that it's a good idea for Korea to have nuclear weapons. If you give me another 30 minutes, I can explain to you why. I even wrote a book on that topic, but I do not have enough time to explain. It's not good. It's not going to be successful. No one country around the world will allow Korea to, give applause for Korea to build the nuclear weapons, including United States, China, Japan, Russia, and others. So attempting to have nuclear weapons is not a good idea. Well, now you see that there are several Korean politicians who started to argue for Korea to become, nuclear, and even at least introduce American tactical nuclear weapons again to the Korean Peninsula. Well, we need those kind of argument. Yeah? This is a plural society. We need to have diversified ideas on the table. Someone has to argue, some prominent scholars or influential politicians must argue that Korea has to have nuclear weapons so that those messages can be transferred to US and North Korea and Russia and China and other countries, right? If we all say, no, Korea will never have nuclear weapons, everybody say that, then they won't worry about us. But if there are influential politicians who start to argue that Korea go nuclear, then Chinese may start to think. Americans may start to think that, if we don't do anything for this North Korean nuclear weapons program, then South Korea may go nuclear, so we have to do something. Yeah? It's strategically, it's very good for us. But I do not agree. I do not believe that we go nuclear. Second, unification is not just a metaphor. Deep inside of our heart, for all Koreans, there is longing for unification. Although there are some teens and 20s who are against the idea of unification because of the burden, because of the uncertainty, okay? Because of the potential instability. But majority of the Korean do have strong longing for unification. We all know that it's going to be very costly. Compared to West Germany, maybe we have to share a burden more than, 10, 20, 30 times. But if that occurs, it can become a crisis, but we try to make crisis to become our opportunity. We've done that before, out of the scratch, 60 years ago. Out of nothing, we've made this economic development, and at the same time, democratic progress. We can do it again. We do not want that kind of terrible situations. As long as it's peaceful unification process, we can do it. As long as it is peaceful, we can absolutely do it. That's our spirit, Korean spirit. We can do it. So we are waiting for the moment. It'll soon come. I don't know when, but it'll soon come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one more.
We have one more short question, please. Yes.
My name is Andreas Breitenstein from Neue Zürcher Zeitung, Switzerland. I have a more historical question. How could South Korea manage to develop from a right-wing military dictatorship so smoothly to democracy?
That's also a very tough question again. It was not so smooth. I mean, compared to other countries, this has been very smooth. But we've struggled through. Yeah. Again, it'll take at least 30 hours to explain, not 30 minutes, but 30 hours to explain fully about your question. So I can only say that Koreans are very much proud of our unique model, successful model, the only model in the world of economic development and at the same time successful democratization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kim Woo-sang again. Thank you. Thank you for your kind message again, Mr. President. That's going to wrap up our special session for today, ladies and gentlemen, and we will be heading out to the National Assembly in just a moment, but just a couple of reminders before we send you out. The first reminder is if you have your surveys filled out, I hope you got a chance to fill those out. If you can drop them off at the registration desk, that's just another reminder for you. And before we do head out to the National Assembly, we're going to be taking the elevator to the first floor and buses will be waiting for you. But before that, we want to get just one more picture in front of this very, very big banner in front of the press center. So I do hope that you can just participate in that last photo session. You won't regret it. There's a very, very big and impressive banner that you'd want to be under for that photo. And also on your ID cards, you will see numbers on the left, I think on the lower left-hand side, and that will be the bus number that you are assigned to for trips to, for instance, the National Assembly today, and when you go to other cities. So if you keep that in mind and just ride the same number bus throughout the whole week, that would be very much appreciated if you could remember that. And also, tomorrow morning you do have another packed schedule, and it seems the forecast is predicting a little rain. So if you could dress warmly, pack an umbrella before you head out. Just another reminder. I warned you guys, so be safe than sorry. Everyone have a great evening. It's been a pleasure to be with you since this morning. We all did a great job, I think. And I do hope you enjoy the rest of the trip. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.